Throughout the history of Formula 1, genius designers and the best engineers money can buy have found ways around the FIA regulations to gain an advantage. Whether they are unfair or not, these are 7 genius ways F1 teams manage to outsmart the FIA. Number 7. The Fduct. The Fduct was McLaren's way to gain speed by reducing drag via the rear wing. However, the conventional way to do this, that is using some sort of aerodynamic device, was illegal in 2010. But McLaren were not going to give up that easily. Instead, they installed an air scoop at the front of the MP425 and channeled that air through a hole in the cockpit, then secretly all the way to the rear wing. On the straights, the driver would place his knee over the hole, which diverted the flow of air into the rest of the duct that fed a slot on the rear wing flap. The sudden influx of air breaks up the flow around the wing and reduces trailing vortices, which is the main cause of drag. With less drag, the car's top speed increased by nearly 5 miles per hour. Seeing this advantage, many teams tried to create their own Fducts, although it was banned in 2011. Yet it was a very impressive device that gave McLaren the edge on the straights. Number 6. Xwings. Tyrrell were notorious for trying out new innovations during their time in F1. In their second to last season in 1997, the two Tyrrells grew a couple extra winglets to the right and left sides of the driver. The Xwings, as they were called, were to add more downforce and were made out of recycled bits of old front wings. The following year, other teams including Ferrari, Sauber, Prost, and Jordan began to sport their own versions of them. But the FIA eventually banned them after one got torn off during a pit stop. Although somewhat controversial for their appearance, it did make for some interesting looking cars that will not be forgotten. Number 5. The mini front wing. Along with Xwings, another weird looking effort to enhance downforce came in 2001. Arrows and Jordan figured that having a rear wing at the back just wasn't enough, so they decided to stick one slightly smaller at the nose of the car as well. Some may call it ingenious, while others just say it's downright ridiculous. But they sure managed to get some attention when they lined up at the start in Monaco. Maybe perhaps too much, since the FIA quickly banned the extra wing before the race could begin, deeming them potentially dangerous. BMW did something similar, but more subtle in 2006 at the French Grand Prix, installing 2 parallel winglets above the suspension that were nicknamed the Twin Towers. They actually were able to complete the race with them, but right afterward, the FIA banned them, stating that they reduced visibility. Number 4. Renault's mass damper. The rules introduced for 2005 required Renault to run an excessive amount of front spring stiffness to keep the wing as close as possible to the ground. This caused an unwanted bounce effect when the car was in pitch, and Renault were determined to find a way around the issue. In the end, they came up with the mass damper, a free-moving weight suspended within a cylinder inside the nose cone that opposed the vertical forces applied to the car. The team found it even more beneficial to vary the weight depending on the circuit, and even added the system to the rear of the car too. Inevitably, other teams got wind of what Renault were doing and built their own versions of it, but none were able to reap as much benefit of the original creators. With the mass dampers, Renault made a strong start to the 2006 season, and other teams were quick to question the legality of the dampers. Later in August, the FIA ruled Renault's mass dampers illegal, claiming the system constituted a movable aerodynamic device. This ruling led to a lot of controversy, since the device itself was inside the nose cone and didn't directly affect airflow. Perhaps adding fuel to the fire Some even suspected that the FIA favored Ferrari and were impartial. But nonetheless, Renault were forced to abandon the system and lost their advantage over their competitors. Number 3. McLaren's rear brake pedal. Of the dozens of technologies banned by the FIA throughout the years, McLaren's rear brake pedal stands out as one of the most unjust. At the 1997 Grand Prix of Luxembourg, which was held at the Nürburgring, McLaren had a solid start during the beginning of the race, but problems quickly began to escalate when both David Coulthard and Mika Häkkinen's cars came to a halt within a lap of each other. Häkkinen's car conveniently stopped near photographer Darren Heath, who had been eagerly waiting for this opportunity. He snuck over to the car, sneakily poked his camera deep into the footwell, and rapidly clicked the shutter. Suspicions were already brewing when sharp-eyed onlookers saw the rear brakes of the McLaren glowing in the middle corners during the previous race at the A1 ring. Everyone couldn't wait for the photos to be revealed, and when they did, McLaren's secret was no longer sealed. As expected, the photos revealed a third pedal, which obviously wasn't for the clutch, since foot-operated clutches were no longer used in F1 by this time. Rather, it was a second brake pedal that allowed the rear brakes to operate on either the left or right side only, reducing wheel spin and eliminating understeer. In one way, it actually gave more emphasis and control to the driver. Nevertheless, the system was banned during the following 1998 season, mainly thanks to Ferrari's protests, leaving Steve Nichols' brilliant idea exposed after a short run. Number 2. The SixWheeler. The Tyrrell P34, commonly known as the SixWheeler, was designed by Derek Gardner, the chief designer of Tyrrell. To reduce the drag and lift that conventional front wheels produced, Tyrrell decided to equip 4 specially manufactured 10-inch wheels at the front with 2 ordinary size wheels at the back. The P34 made its debut at the Spanish Grand Prix in 1976 and proved to be very competitive. Both Jody Scheckter and Patrick Depailler produced promising results, although the P34's golden moment came during the Swedish Grand Prix, where Scheckter and Depailler finished first and second, making Jody Scheckter the first and only driver to win a race in a 6-wheeled car. Due to the P34's unique design, Tyrrell had to make portholes for the driver to see their front tires. They still remain the only team to have raced and won with more than 4 wheels, and the radical design will remain a nostalgic reminder of the craftiness of the sport during the late 1990s. Number 1. The fan car. The BT46B was Brabham's quickly improvised yet clever way to harness the power of ground effect. The idea was to reduce pressure beneath the car, essentially sucking it to the track and increasing downforce. While Colin Chapman, the head of Lotus, did this by modifying the underside of the Lotus 78, packaging issues with the BT46 prevented Brabham from doing the same. Instead, Gordon Murray figured out an ingenious way to resolve the issue. At the 1978 Swedish Grand Prix, Brabham installed a fan at the rear of the car to suck all the air out from beneath it. Since adding movable aerodynamic devices was illegal, Brabham mounted the fan alongside the radiator, cleverly calling it just a cooling device. The last-minute improvise led to Niki Lauda winning the race with the so-called fan car. Yet, despite offering a huge advantage, Lauda reportedly believed it was unfair and took away from the skill of the driver. It was quickly banned there afterwards, but was definitely a clever way to beat the FIA. Well, there you have it. These are just 7 of the many ways F1 teams craftily bend the rules of the FIA to extract as much power and speed from their cars. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more F1 content, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Also be sure to let me know what was your favorite of the many great innovations mentioned in this video. Until next time on Race Day Recap.